What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the newly released Dondozo, which to obtain for the Great League, unfortunately, you have to complete the task, win 3 tier 1 raids, which I'm absolutely not a fan of. However, I was planning on showcasing Tatsugiri anyways in the Great League, and actually from one of the raids I did for Tatsugiri, I managed to get a 10-10-11 IV, which is actually low enough to fit into the Great League, so that is quite handy for me. It means I can actually run both of them in the same team. Now I'm actually rounding out the team with a third fish Pokemon for the theme of this team that I built this season in Overquill, since it did have its evolution requirements simplified during the Hisui event. Now, are Dondozo or Tatsugiri worth building for the Great League? Well, in their current states, absolutely not. They both have very underwhelming movesets. Dondozo does at least have quite a decent amount of bulk to it, but Tatsugiri is one of the most useless Pokemon I have tried to run this season. However, of course, things could change in future seasons, so potentially you might want to try and get one of each for the future, but right now I definitely would not recommend building either of these Pokemon. But with that being said, we did still get some nice wins, so let's get into the question of the day. What do you think was the most underwhelming new Pokemon released this season because of the moveset that Pokemon released with? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so go into the first battle, leading Overquill into Shadow Typhlosion. Now, this is a playable lead matchup, but I do have two water types in the back. One of them fairly bulky, and the other one also only going to take neutral damage from Thunder Punches, so I don't mind swapping out here into Dondozo. Unfortunately, met with an Araquanid, but kind of good to bait it out here. My Tatsugiri would be pretty useless in the situation, just because Bug Bites would absolutely shred us. But the opponent gonna bait with a Bubble Beam. This likely going to be another Bubble Beam, and I recognize straight away my switch clock is coming up, so I might as well just bank all of that energy, swap back into my Overquill. Unfortunately, they reach yet another Bubble Beam, but this does give me a huge opportunity to farm up extra energy, farming up to a Shadow Ball and an Aqua Tail. Shadow Ball gets the KO there. If they come back in with the Shadow Typhlosion, I'm not going to throw straight away. Instead, I'm going to look to go for 2 Poison Stings, throwing on Good Timing. If the opponent wants to throw on Good Timing here, they're going to go for an extra Incinerate, which will actually allow me to reach yet another Aqua Tail here. Going to grab the final shield. I could try and snipe with my Dondozo, but the opponent actually probably predicting that, so they swap out into their final Pokemon in Credilli. But now we can come in with the Tatsugiri here. Unfortunately, with the energy advantage, they will outpace me to that first charge move, but they don't go for a Rock Tomb. Instead, full sending a Grass Knot, which means now we're not debuffed. I can full send an Outrage. Outrage gets the KO there up against Credilli. They come back in with Shadow Typhlosion. I actually do not need to shield here, as Thunder Punch doesn't quite get the KO. And at this point, I could shield this and go for the Water Gun farm down, but it doesn't really make a difference here. We come in, one more Water Gun from Dondozo, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Overquill into a Toedscruel. So, not an ideal matchup for me. Going to be safe swapping into Dondozo. I am on Waterfall this time around. We are going to no shield here, predicting maybe a wrap bait, but unfortunately they do full send the Seed Bomb. But speaking of full sending, I'm going for the Outrage. Outrage connects, it does huge damage, and the opponent actually not committing to a farm down. I think they would have got it there, so that's huge for me. Dragon Claw, of course, does get the KO, but now we can go for an aggressive resisted Poison Sting farm down and come out with at least an Aqua Tail loaded. Not great for me, but I expect the opponent probably not going to shield here, so I will just go straight for the Aqua Tail, and then I'm going to swap into my Tatsugiri. They do actually end up shielding, but we come in with the Tatsugiri here, and at this point, of course, going to have to shield. This Pokemon is very glassy. They, again, go for Seed Bomb there, so potentially not even running Wrap there, but either way, I don't really care. I'm not messing around here. Just going to fire off the Surf. Surf gets the KO, and their final Pokemon is going to be the Dedenne, but we're only taking neutral damage from the Thunder Shocks here. Surf is going to grab the final shield, and the opponent does not commit to a farm down. That is huge for me. They go for Parabolic Charge. They boost up their defense, but it doesn't make a difference. From this range, Shadow Ball should still be enough damage to get the KO despite that defense boost, and it does take out the Dedenne, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Overquill into a Shadow Gramble, and I have to just say this right now. If you are running like Charm Double Mud Slap or vice versa in the Catch Cup, like, just get a life, seriously. You built these Pokemon. I mean, Toedscruel is completely acceptable. This is a new Pokemon that released this season, but Like, come on, man. Like, what the heck is this? Anyways, unfortunately, Toadscrawl is definitely problematic for this team. So we're going to come in, fire off the surf there. Unfortunately, the opponent going to commit to a huge overfarm and play that perfectly, throwing on CMP there. Unfortunately, Dondozo losing CMP apparently into the Toadscrawl, which is also a fairly bulky Pokemon. So that kind of just shows how bulky Dondozo is. But unfortunately, we lose switch advantage here. Of course, they go for that wrap debuff in my defense. I have to swap out here, and it is going to be double Mud Slap with Gastrodon in the back. There's not a lot we can do here. We're going to fire off the Shadow Ball. They can actually tank that very comfortably. We're going to come in with Tatsugiri. I recognize there's nothing I can do, and so I just concede the match. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see a Skeledirge in the lead. Honestly, not really sure why I didn't swap out of that matchup, but the opponent actually going to swap out instead into a Whiscash here. So we go and full send the Shadow Ball. I'm now swapping into Dondozo, catching the Mud Bomb here. Mud Bomb, not going to do too much damage there. However, likewise, these water guns, they're not really adding up as much as I was hoping they would, so the opponent will actually reach 3 Mud Bombs before I can fully farm them down. So actually, I'm not going to commit a shield. Instead, I'm just going to fire off the surf there, get the KO, force the opponent to throw their energy as soon as they come back in with that Skeledirge. And remember, Tatsugiri is going to double resist Incinerate, so we're not taking much damage at all despite the boost to their attack, but they come in with a Carbink. Now, Carbink, of course, usually very good up against dragons, but not up against this Dragon-type Pokemon, as we are on Water Gun and we have access to Surf. I'm going to shield this. Unfortunately, it looks like they will be able to fully Rock Throw farm me down and dealing more damage with the fast moves than I can actually deal with the Water Gun, which is very embarrassing, but we've certainly put them into range where hopefully, well, I say certainly and then I say hopefully, Arcatel will get the KO and we can, of course, take out the Carbink. We go for 2 Poison Stings here, once again throwing on good timing. Arcatel takes out the Skeledirge, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Bastardon in the lead. So, of course, not ideal for me. Going to be safe swapping into Dondozo, and unfortunately met with a Regidrago. I'm going to full send the Outrage here. Honestly, if I go for a Surf bait and they call it, then we just lose. Whereas at least I can guarantee either big damage or a shield. We're going to force the opponent to throw their energy, and they go for Breaking Swipe, and the opponent doesn't realize that it takes so long to get to Outrage. I would not have made it to another move there, but the opponent uses all of their energy. Unfortunately, since I'm on Shadow Ball, I'm still going to be outpaced, and actually, even if I had Dark Pulse here, they would actually take 1 turn less to reach their 3rd Breaking Swipe there anyways. But either way, I'm going to overfarm, fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to get the KO there. I'm going to swap out into Tatsugiri as the opponent comes back in with their Bastardon, and here, technically, I could have fired off the Surf, but I did not want it being caught onto their final Pokemon, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Dusclops. So at this point, I'm going to bait with a Surf here. I'm hoping I can tank a Charge move and reach another move myself. But let's see. The opponent's going to fire off a Shadow Punch, and unfortunately, we just barely do not reach the Surf there. The opponent is going to fire off the Charge move here. If it's an Ice Punch, it's game over. They actually bait with a Shadow Punch. It doesn't really matter whilst I can reach a Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball is going to be enough to get the KO. We're not going to be taking out this Bastardon, and so unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We can see Sableye in the lead. So, of course, both hitting for resisted damage with those fast moves. I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball. We actually win CMP in this matchup. Shadow Ball puts them into farm down range for one of my 2 Pokemon in the back. I'm going to shield this as they do go and full send a Power Gem, then swap into a shiny Shadow Scizor. So, cool flex here. We're going to go for the Alcatel. I'm then swapping into Tatsugiri as I'm thinking, you know what, Trailblaze is going to be neutral. I am resisting the fast moves. I can probably tank this, reach a move, but no, that is not the case. Unfortunately, they boost up their attack there. They can resist it, Bullet Punch, farm me down, and that is certainly not ideal. But we can come in with the Dondozo. I can shield once here and hopefully commit to a full farm down. They fire off the Night Slash bait, but they do not reach another charge move. At this point here, we've got a decent amount of energy. They come back in with the Sableye just to be fully farmed down there. And their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Diggersby. So we do definitely still have play here. I'm firing off the Surf. I do have another Surf already loaded. I swap. I catch the charge move there. Did I really need to do that? I'm not so sure. Actually, I think if I'd have just thrown the charge move on CMP, I could have been fine. Here, the opponent does reach a last second charge move, but it's just going to be a resisted Fire Punch. We can tank that, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on their into next battle. Going to see a Thievel in the lead. So, of course, this is an okay matchup for me. The opponent's going to say swap. I thought it was going to be a Mastodon, but no, that is a Lairon. Of course, Lairon did get buffed this season. Also, I guess, going to get buffed next season with Body Slam and Rock Slide going to be dealing slightly more damage, although I do assume you will still run Rock Tomb as the preferred charge move there, at least of the rock typing. But anyways, I'm not going to overpump too much here. I'm going to go for a Surf. Surf gets the KO. They're going to come back in with that Thievel. Unfortunately, I have been debuffed, so Surf not going to do much damage here, but Surf is going to connect. They do go for a full Sucker Punch farm down. Weird animation there, but they're going to come in with a Shadow Alolan Sand Slash. Now, I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball here. I'm not baiting. Shadow Ball is going to, unfortunately, be shielded by the opponent. I recognize this is just going to be an Ice Punch here, but I am going to shield anyways. Maybe should let that go through, but either way, we come in with the Tatsugiri. I'm hoping, I'm praying I can live this and reach the Surf, and I am just barely able to do so. This either gets the KO or grabs the final shield, and it does grab that final shield. So at this point, they come back in with the Thievel. I'm going to shield here. The opponent is going to bait with a Night Slash. However, I now recognize this is just going to be another Night Slash. So what I can do now is simply farm up 2 back-to-back charge moves here. I'm actually farming up close to 100 energy, firing off the Arquitel. Arquitel, of course, going to get that KO there. And we've got a Shadow Ball loaded for the Alolan Sand Slash coming back in. Shadow Ball gets the KO there. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on that into next battle. I'm going to see a Shadow Sizzle in the lead. So, not great for me. I'm going to be safe swapping into my Dondozo. And the opponent is going to stay in, farm up to a potential Trailblaze. So, I will be respecting it here. And the opponent is actually going to grab the shield and then swap into Azumarill. And that is awful for me, as unfortunately, Azumarill just completely walls the energy here. But, once again, Dondozo is very bulky. So, there is the potential that I can tank a move and then actually just swap out of this matchup here, banking a ton of energy. So I'm going to do exactly that. Swap into the Overquill here. Potentially could have banked more energy there, but either way, I'm going to no-shield this as the opponent is going to go and full send a Play Rough. The opponents are then going to swap back into their Sizzle, so I'm going to full send a Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, that is shielded, and I recognize I'm not going to reach another one, so we do just settle for the Arquitel, and Arquitel actually doesn't quite get the KO there, but it does put them into farm down range. So we're going to come in with the Tatsugiri, go for that Water Gun farm down, and let's see what the opponent wants to do. They can come back in with the Azumarill. Unfortunately, whilst I am double resisting their fast moves, I'm also not dealing much damage with my own fast moves. They are going to full send a Play Rough. I'm now going to overfarm as much as possible. Unfortunately, not throwing on very good timing, however, as I do throw on alignment, giving them the bubble in for free. So I'm going to swap and snipe with Dondozo. I'm hoping we can still win this here. Surf gets the KO, but they've got Credilli in the back, and unfortunately, this is just giving them the perfect opportunity to fully farm me down and come out with a charge move loaded. So at this point, of course, it's going to be game over. There's not much I can do here. So we're just going to give up. The opponent is actually going to go for a Rock Tomb bait, though, and I actually just didn't realize they baited there, so I stopped attacking. Maybe I could have reached a Surf there. I don't know if Surf would have KO'd after a debuff, but potentially I could have won that game, but I just lost concentration there, expecting a Grass Knot, and as a result, we end up losing there. But GG to a trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see a Dusclops in the lead. The opponent is going to fire off the Ice Punch there. They then swap into Steelix. Maybe should have gone for an Arquitel first there just to guarantee some damage, but we swap into Dondozo. Dondozo is very bulky. Argument could be made that I should have swapped into Tatsugiri here just because I would take neutral damage from their fast moves, but of course if they're on breaking swipe, I probably would need to shield the charge move. So at this point, happy to let the next move go through there. We've grabbed a shield advantage, and I'm hoping I put them into range where Arquitel will still get the KO anyways. So we do have quite a lot of energy here. I am going to overfarm just slightly, fire off the Arquitel. Arquitel is going to get the KO there. And let's see, the opponent's going to come in with a Moltres. Honestly, I shouldn't have swapped out there. I was taking resisted fast move damage, but now unfortunately I've got my Tatsugiri aligned to the Dusclops here. I recognize I probably need to full send an Outrage. We end up throwing on CMP here. An Outrage is not respected. It gets the KO there, and suddenly things are looking a lot better for me. So at this point, gonna fire off that Surf. Should be grabbing the final shield here. They are of course gonna get a full Sucker Punch farm down, but I think I should still be fine here. So at this point, I'm gonna shield this up. I recognize, of course, that Arquitel isn't quite going to do as much damage as a resisted Shadow Ball, so I go for Shadow Ball, but it does not get the KO there, and I didn't realize they already had back-to-back charge moves, so Fly takes me out there, and I end up losing that game. Honestly, I thought we were in a winning situation, but apparently not. So GG's to that opponent there. Into the next battle. I'm going to see Flourishes in the lead, so an okay matchup for me. I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball here. Unfortunately, non-stab. This is not going to get the KO, but it does put them into farm down range, so I'm actually going to shield this. They do just go for a disarming voice, but they swap into a Shadow Talonflame. I should come in with a Dondozo here just because I can tank a Charge Reef. Even a Brave Bird probably able to tank it. Though actually, maybe not. I'm actually not as certain as I was. But either way, they bait with their fly. And as a result, we get the full farm down. And they come in with a Metang. So at this point, I'm going to fire off the Surf. Surf is going to grab the first shield from the opponent. And the opponent committing to a very aggressive farm down. But they don't get there before I reach a second Surf. And Surf, number 2, grabs the final shield. We swap into our Overquill. And if the opponent doesn't make a catch here, I should be fine. I call the bait. The opponent doesn't make the catch. And now I can just full send a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball gets KO there. And of course, they're in range where you can farm them down. If not with the Overquill, then at least with the Tatsugiri. And so the opponent just concedes the match. So, going into the next battle, GG's to opponent, by the way, we lead into a Como-O. So, unfortunately, Dragon-type Pokemon are quite awkward for me to deal with, especially if they do end up shielding the Shadow Ball there. Of course, could have baited and could have outpaced them just barely to the next charge move, but we do full send the Shadow Ball, and as a result, I'm actually going to be forced to swap out here. The opponent swaps out as well into a Shadow Sizzle, looking to snipe me. At this point, I'm going to shield, and the opponent is going to bait with a Night Slash. That feels really bad, but the opponent is just going to settle for another Night Slash. So at this point, of course, Night Slash is neutral. I can commit to a full Waterfall farm down, coming out with a ton of energy, but the opponent comes in with a Belly Bolt. So at this point, not looking ideal for me. We fire off the Surf. Surf is then going to be caught onto their Como-O here. So of course, Surf is going to be grabbing the final shield. I can snipe with the Overquill, but I just took the damage from the Dragon Tail. So whilst we get the KO there, we put ourselves into perfect farm down range. We don't even reach an Arctotail, and as a result, the opponent can now just simply commit to a Zap Cannon. I'm not getting a farm down before they get there, and obviously up against Tatsugiri, Zap Cannon gets the one shot. They can just Sucker Punch, farm down Dondozo, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, you can see a Dusclops in the lead once again. So the opponent is going to stay in this matchup here before swapping into a Shadow Annihilate. Now, they might not expect Shadow Ball. I'm full sending it. And Shadow Ball is going to get the one shot there. They now come in with a Mandibuzz. At this point, I'm going to bank a ton of energy. Then swap into my Dondozo. Basically, just use it as a damage sponge. The opponent full sends Dark Pulse. You can see we tanked that very comfortably. I'm now going to fire off a Surf here. Looks to be a CMP tie. Surf is going to be no shield. It really does not do much damage in return either, but I can once again tank another Dark Pulse. The opponent is going to outpace me to the next charge move here. I think at this point we do just let the move go through, but Aerial Ace doesn't get the KO there. I didn't want to swap back into the Overquill, so I do swap into my Tatsugiri. However, maybe swapping into the Overquill would have been better for me. However, we are going to shield up the next charge move anyways. I'm then just going to go straight for a Surf. I recognize if I go for a Surf and they no-shield this, Water Guns will add up and I will put them into range where either we get the farm down or I can take them out with an Arctotail. So at this point, Shadow Punch is going to be taking me out here. We're going to come back in with the Overquill. We do get one turn bringing lag there. So instead of throwing on alignment, I do just throw straight away there, which I guess kind of is, or would have been alignment anyways. But either way, we swap, we make the catch there as the opponent fires off the Ice Punch, which doesn't get the KO after they undercharge it. However, it doesn't really matter as we can come in with the Overquill. All we need to do here is farm up to back-to-back charge moves once again. And once again, we do actually overfarm ever so slightly more than that. We can fire off the Arctotail. Arctotail gets the KO there. We have the Shadow Ball loaded, but we practice throwing on good timing. Firing off one Poison Sting. Shadow Ball gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we can see a Whiscash in the lead, so not ideal for me. Going to be safe swapping into Dondozo straight away, and unfortunately met with the Dene. Now, they will be able to outpace me to this first charge move here, and of course, Parabolic Charge won't get the KO, but it does boost up their defense, meaning they can now tank a Surf relatively comfortably here. They don't need to shield this, and actually, they get the perfect farm down there, coming out with minimal HP, but also coming out with a ton of energy. So at this point, we're going to come back in with the Overquill. I'm going to no-shield this, and the opponent is just going to go for a Parabolic Charge there. So boosting up their defense doesn't really make a difference. We swap into Tatsugiri, and they've got a Shadow Aurorus in the back, but Unfortunately, because we are part dragon, we're taking neutral damage from the powder snows, from the weather balls. I will be forced to shield here, and they will actually outpace me to back-to-back charge moves. So I'm going to be forced to double shield. What I'm hoping is I can leave this matchup close to an outrage, but I'm nowhere near it. And unfortunately, what that means is I have to fire off the Surf. Otherwise, they will outpace me to the charge move. And of course, Surf does not need to be shielded. We're going to swap into Overquill, and we do actually reach an Aqua Tail. However, the opponent has simply farmed up to back-to-back charge moves. So they are going to shield that up there, fire off the first Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb gets the KO. A second Mud Bomb, of course, going to be taking out the Tatsugiri from this range. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Mandibuzz. So this is a fine lead matchup for me here. The opponent is going to choose to stay in. They're on Snarl, and I don't know why, but I throw after they get to 6 Snarls there, and the opponent also, luckily for me, ends up throwing on CMP. If the opponent didn't throw there, I'd have given them a full Snarl in for free. Honestly, I think I was just a little bit tired at this point. But either way, we're going to come back in with our Dondozo here. Sponge the damage. They do just settle for an Aerial Ace. And again, they come in with the Dene. But this time, I'm actually able to outpace them to that first Surf. And as a result, Surf does end up grabbing a shield. Unfortunately, once again, Parabolic Charge, not quite going to get the KO. So they do get a slight extra farm there. But it doesn't really matter too much. Overquill does have a lot of energy already loaded. So we're going to come in. We're going to overfarm here. Gonna fire off that Shadow Ball, even though they're boosted. Shadow Ball probably does get the KO, but they end up using their final shield. So this one, I'm going to shield my Overquill here. Look to potentially watch out for a catch from the opponent, and the opponent tries to catch there. I do take quite a while to actually react and swap into my Tatsugiri here, but I'm going to no-shield this. The opponent going to go for an Aerial Ace, which does not get the KO, and it looks like that might have been a CMP tie here, but doesn't matter. Surf takes out the Gygar. They come back in with the Dene here, and at this point, I am going to no-shield. Of course, Parabolic Charge gets the KO there. We can come back in with the Overquill. I farm up to 100 energy and actually over that. Not really sure why, but I guess they're not going to farm me down with the Snarl damage. So it really just depends if they will reach 2 charge moves here. I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail. I'm going to go for one more Poison Sting and fire off the next Aqua Tail. If they've already got back-to-back charge moves, then we will be losing this. But if not, then I should be okay here. We shot up the Aerial Ace, and they didn't have back-to-back. So as a result, we can reach a last-second Aqua Tail, take out the Mandibuzz, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.